was Dr. King. And then that led me to Adam Powell and a lot of the people.
Mr. Gilchrist?
But I was put off by Malcolm X.
Why?
Because what he was saying and the way he was saying it was too blunt.
And this controls.
It was dangerous.
Down and up.
And you didn't say those things in those
days. So they were on a minute ago.
So we had been socialized as kids to get around wrong, not to confront it. And Malcolm spoke in very declarative terms, and he said some terrible things about white people that we thought, but you would never express it, you see. He talked about the way this country was not a democracy, but a hypocrisy, and he talked about what had been happening to us down south and up south. And he was not shy. He had and he was very, very intimidating. I'm man enough to admit it. There are a lot of people who are my age who will speak, you know, with love about Malcolm as though it had always been that way. But that's not so.
Mr. Gilchrist?
And then, mind you, I had this apartment, a bachelor apartment on Convent Avenue, and I'd been having a lot of fun, you know. And here he comes talking about a different way of life. First of all, he dropped his last name. Well, we had been socialized to take great pride in our last name. The more European it sounded, the better. There was not a flinch about, you know, noble. Oh, that's wonderful. If it wasn't French enough, you'd put an ETT on it, you know, to make it sound more French. And so here's a man who dropped his good last name and replaced it with an X. I thought the man was crazy. And then he talked about discipline. And he talked
self-discipline.
Self-discipline. He said that we do not believe in drinking.
Hey, this is Lloyd Williams.
Every time I would have a drink.
I'm on.
And he said that we don't smoke cigarettes with or without a label.
Okay.
And I would smoke.
I'm looking at Gil Noble.
Yes.
And he said we don't eat pork.
And do you want me to mute initially?
And then he said we don't fornicate.
Okay. Right.
Yes.
And so psychologically, I said, Malcolm, I'll see you later.
Yes.
You know, and all. But what he was doing in deprecating whiteness, I came to understand later that he was rearranging the balance that we needed because we had glorified whiteness and deprecated blackness. And so he was tilting, using exaggerated terms, to give us a sense of self and to take whites down a little as they needed to be. And the discipline that he was talking about were things that we really needed to address. But I couldn't swallow that at the time. So jumping forward in time, a lot of things happened in the struggle, and Malcolm was struck down in '65, and I never went to hear him speak. My only impression of Malcolm was on the sound bites on the evening news. And if there was a rally in Harlem, where I'm living now, I'm living in Harlem, and he would have a rally 10 blocks away, I would go in the other direction.
Did he have a mosque there?
He had a mosque on 116th Street, and I didn't live too far away from there. But I went out of my way to avoid this man because I thought he was wrong.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. That was Gil Noble. Wow. His opinion of Malcolm I shared at the same time, at that time, because Malcolm scared most of us. He said some bold things that you didn't say in those days. We're talking about the late 50s. Lloyd Williams, one of our elders, and myself, and Graham was a youngster himself.
High school.
High school. And we have a real youngster, 32-year-old, a helper at a videographer at NAN. My same age as my grandson, well, a little younger. And he helps us at NAN. When I was ill, he came in and really did a grand job.
Thank you, sir.
Really beautiful. But what we're talking about for Black History Month is the influence of Malcolm X on all of us. And I like to bring in Lloyd Williams, chairman of Harlem's Chamber of Commerce. Hi, Lloyd.
Good afternoon to you, Mr. Gilchrist, and your associate. It's an honor to be with you at this time. As you know, I was and am honored that Malcolm X was my godfather. Anything that is done to communicate the message and intent and direction of Malcolm X, I always want to be a part of. Also, you know, I was listening to my big brother, Gil Noble, the late, great Gil Noble, and there was reference to how intimidating and frightening Malcolm X was to many and could be. I want to share with you that Malcolm X was one of the nicest persons on the face of the earth. And to be with Malcolm and to be a part of his smile and his energy and his happiness and his glow was incredible. So oftentimes the question is, what are people afraid of? Are they afraid of the messenger, or are they afraid of the message? And I would suggest to you that when we look back and we realize that it was 1964 when my godfather was assassinated, his name, his image, his message resonates even more greatly now than before, and I would suggest in the future will continue to grow and develop, because there is a point where truth catches up with reality. And so Malcolm spoke truth, and reality is starting to catch up. When we look at the Black Lives Matter movement, that's Malcolm's voice with the Black Lives Matter movement. And when we look at what's been happening across the nation as persons of color are assassinated, incarcerated, or undereducated, that's Malcolm's voice speaking truth to power.
Well, you know, I was 24 when Malcolm died. It was February '65. All right?
Correct.
All right? So back in those days, like Gil said, you didn't talk about white people like that. You didn't shame them into submission, really. That's what Malcolm did. And we got along by realizing that the prejudice. I mean, you were in Harlem in those days. Leroy was on the phone, I believe. We're talking about late 50s. You know, in front of the Sugar Bowl. I don't know if I'm 80, and how close to that are you?
I'm 10 years away from you, 10 years earlier.
Oh,
and,
you're that young?
Let me also mention, you addressed Malcolm's assassination in February of '65, you heard me reference 64. And the reason I referenced 64 is because it was at 64 that most of the absolute changes took place with Malcolm. We will recall, of course, that it was the assassination of former President Kennedy in '63.
Yeah.
Where Malcolm referenced chickens coming home to roost.
And it was true.
And it was during '64 where he was expelled from the Nation of Islam at the end of '63, and the continuation of his incredible evolution during '64 that brought us to February of '65 in Harlem. So '64 was a very critical year with Malcolm, where the real historic figure that we now know emerged and was seen and brought to the world.
That's true. But I like to hear more about what it was like as a child being around Malcolm. You know, I had the pleasure of being the way I got to know Malcolm was through Reverend Kenyatta, who was his bodyguard.
Charles Kenyatta.
Yeah. And he told me all the ins and outs about Malcolm, how he was such an honorable guy. And he was, when he went, I mean, he was a Taurus anyway, so when he goes, you know, towards something, he's gun-ho. I mean, he goes all out for it. And that's the kind of individual he was. I mean, with integrity about everything he did. And some of the expulsion from the nation was because of that fact, that he was honest.
Without question, Malcolm was a person who was actually very soft-spoken.
That's right.
He was an orator in front of large audiences, but he was very soft-spoken, and he was kindly. But one of the things that I learned from my godfather was it is more important to be accurate than to be right. Oftentimes, people today are focused on being right. You're right, I'm wrong, I'm wrong, you're right. But are you accurate? And so what happened with my relationship with Malcolm, I won't consume too much time on this. As a child, my godfather would have me meet him on Saturday mornings when he was in New York City. And he would invite me to breakfast meetings. And breakfast meeting might be at Shabazz No. 7 restaurant, or it might be in Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, wherever the meeting took place. And in those meetings, I was a little kid at that point in time, 10, 11 years old, etc. And he would be meeting with politicians. He would be meeting with the clergy. He would be meeting with union leaders. He would be meeting with number runners. He would be meeting with the mafia. He would be meeting with everyone because everyone wanted to get to know who this gentleman was. And they would have meetings, and the meetings at times became intense. And voices might be raised. And at some point in time, as it became more intense, someone would invariably look at me over in the corner and say, "Who's the kid?"
Mm.
And Malcolm would say, "Don't worry about it. That's my godson."
Oh.
And what would happen is when the meeting was over, he would debrief me.
Mm.
Every meeting. What did you learn? What did you hear? What are your thoughts?
What?
And one of the things, Mr. Gilchrist, that I want to share with your listening and viewing audience is one of the most important things I learned that sticks with me today is the importance of being wrong.
Only up to it.
Because
Only up to it.
oftentimes we are so focused on being right
Right.
that we don't understand that you seldom learn when you are right. Because all you learn when you are right is a reinforcement of what you already know.
Yeah.
But when you are wrong and you're open to learning, then you will be given the information in terms of why your conclusion was not accurate, and you end up learning from that, being educated from that. So I always now, when I think of Malcolm, remember how important it is to be comfortable in being wrong, because wrong is a learning experience. And we are so in conflict with each other about having to be right, that oftentimes what I learned from Malcolm is it's more important to be accurate than to be right.
Right.
So that was one of the great lessons I learned from him that stays with me today as I sit in meetings and I listen to people dealing with pros and cons. And oftentimes all they are trying to do is be right. That hopefully we'll put less focus on being right, more focus on being accurate, but also recognizing that there's truth in everyone's view. The question is how much truth, etc. But if we don't respect that there is truth in the view of someone who sees something absolutely different from us and find that truth, then they will never find our truth.
And I see National Action Network being a combination of Martin and Malcolm and speaking the truth. You know, Saturday is church for me. I've been there 25 years, and each week I learn something, and I do face my flaws, and we have JT here today, a youngster that helped out when I was ill and came in and saved the day.
Thank you for having me, sir.
And I brought him to, to talk about our church. The person that is the youngest in the crowd, and I want to educate him on the truths of the past, how powerful, how, this is Black History Month, so what we're teaching our younger folks is the spiritual energy that's prevalent everywhere. And being a videographer, you capture the spirit of the moment. I mean, him and I share the blessings of being able to do that and do it well. Because I spent 16 years in church, and like they say, photography captures the spirit. The Indians went the other way when somebody took a photograph of them. But it actually catches the spirit. And you can talk to the picture and feel the spirit of that moment. And videography is no different than that. All it's doing is, especially in church, and like I spent 16 years at convent doing 4-camera shoots, and I used to capture the Spirit every Sunday. And on Saturdays, I went to National Action Network and captured the Spirit there. And I wanted him to share his opinion or how this affects him, talking to us elders and knowing that such a person as yourself, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and I learned this about you being the grandchild of Malcolm at Sharpton.
Godson.
Godson. What did I say?
Grandchild.
Grandchild. Godson. Now, I learned this from Reverend Sharpton. He calls you the godfather of Harlem and Malcolm's grandson. And
Godson.
Godson, I keep saying. That's even better, being the godson. But let's hear from our youth.
Yes, sir.
What do you think about all you've seen so far?
Hey, JT, before you say something, let me just say that Mr. Gilchrist captures the rally at National Action Network is on Saturday for me. That is my church. I go to hear the message of God delivered in varying forms and fashions, and the delivery of that message is oftentimes connected with the truth of the moment. Please go right ahead, JT.
You hit the nail on the coffin. That's exactly what it is for me as well. Me and Mr. Gilchrist have this conversation all the time, but you can literally feel once Rev gets to a certain pinnacle in the auditorium or in the rally, you can tell that God is kind of there, like really there at that moment. And we always catch each other's eye because we know where it's going. But sincerely, it's been a pleasure to serve at NAM. You know, unfortunately, I stepped in when Mr. Gilchrist got sick, but I think even that was God ordained for our relationship. But NAM now it went from being a job to it actually being like an assignment. And I was talking to one of my friends earlier, and I was earlier this week, and I was just telling them now I feel like NAM is, even Reverend Sharpton himself, it's like a new form of school for me. And he's a new form of teacher. And I embrace it as such. And Saturdays, I mean, it's incredible the amount of wisdom, the amount of information, the amount of history that is gained just from one rally. And I told Mr. Gilchrist, even before I was coming in there, I used to listen every Saturday morning to Rev on the radio. Every Saturday morning, if I was in the car, whatever I was doing, I made sure at 9 a.m. that I was up watching, or up listening at that time on the radio. But it's been an amazing experience. It's just another form of class that I'm willing to accept, and I'm willing to learn anything and everything from anybody. So, especially about history.
You know, Winston, to hear him speak, and this is an important piece because the baton has to be passed. I used to run track, and we ran relay races. And the passing of the baton is very critical. And in the time that you're going to be working with Winston, it's sort of a passing of a baton.
Of course.
The elder is teaching the younger.
Yes, sir.
So that the race continues. None of us are here forever.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
none of us. So we have to make sure that we bring in young people in everything that we're doing. And you, in turn, will be mentoring and teaching even younger people as time goes on. And not that they have to be at NAM, but they might be somewhere else.
Definitely.
You see, so as we teach each other, it broadens the base. And it makes the work even lighter for us. But not to say it was good that you got sick, but as you said, God ordained, because it brought you to that point where you could be of assistance, not only to Winston, but to Rev and to the members of NAM.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing that you said that, because I said that this week as well. Like, as far as my other occupations, most of them are churches, some of them are corporate accounts, but the churches, I'm kind of teaching the young people how to basically stream at their church, from videography to pictures to social media, whatever it is. But it's a young people's type of, I want to say, group or board or however you want to call it. So it's what you said about me teaching the younger group. It's like another confirmation for me that what I'm doing is kind of in the right direction.
Well, you know, the point that was so well made about passing the baton. The other part of passing the baton is we, in track and field, utilize that analogy. We look at someone like Usain Bolt, and we watch him with his extraordinary skill set winning the race. What we don't see is the number of times he fell and tripped. And why that is important, it is passing the baton. If you don't learn how to pass the baton, you lose the race. And you only learn how to pass the baton by dropping the baton. Because when you drop the baton, you analyze what did you do? Did you hold your hand back far enough? Did we try to pass it soon? Here's my point, that we need to be comfortable in learning how to fall, because it's only by learning how to fall that we learn how to get up. Okay? And you're going to fall. It's basketball. You know, they use baseball for an analogy. If you are a baseball player and you are batting 300, you are one of the best in the game. But what does that mean? That means that 7 out of 10 times you did not get a hit. Okay? And that's the only way you get to 300.
Very true.
That 7 out of 10 times you did not get a hit. So the thought process of passing the baton is such a great thought process, and I'm just so proud to hear it. We are, as and many will say, we are not in a sprint. We're in a marathon.
That's it.
Sir.
And the only way you are able to do that is to know that each one of us can go at a maximum speed for a limited amount of time. And when we get to that maximum speed, we need to pass the baton.
Definitely.
And we need to learn how to pass the baton. And we only do that through practice. So your thought about passing the baton, this hit me as we talk about church and we talk about the rally and we talk about youth. Yes, it is very important that our young people learn from the elders. Very important, but it's equally important that the elders learn from the young people.
Yeah. I'm learning a lot from JT.
No, I'm learning a lot from Mr. G. Trust me.
I mean, it's funny. The equipment that he's utilizing now, I was just about to transfer to that same switcher, the same switcher he's got now. Because I've got the old antiquated stuff, because I do DVDs. And all the people are coming in, and people like to take the service home. That's what I did at Convent. I did DVDs for the people, so they could take the service home. There's nothing like taking Sharpton home and listening, like I play back on television. We've had a program here at M&N for since 1941 Madison Avenue. It must be close to 25 years. I've been here 25, and I've had the show since I've been here, or maybe a year after. But people look forward to capturing that spirit. You know, when Rev gets hot, he relates to everyone by telling how God helped them. That's his famous. See, they can talk about me all they want, but I have the personal experience when God stepped in and pulled me out of the fire.
Definitely.
And we all have been there. Like my near-death experience was, I was asking God, what's next? I had no fear of dying, but my wife suffered the most because she watched it, and I don't remember anything. I had a stroke, and I fell and hit my head and had a brain bleed. If she hadn't have been there, I'd be dead. I wouldn't be here today. So I think, hallelujah, thank you for Bev. Amen, Bev?
Okay, Bev. The heroine.
And I can smile, and it was tragic. I mean, she suffered more than anybody.
Wow.
Because of that love energy and realizing that you're blessed. Here I turned 80 in April 27th, and this happened May 26th, almost a month after I came from doing a show. I went home, and she tells the same story. I finished saying, God, I'm going to live to be 100. And boom, a minute later, I passed out.
Wow.
They finally explained it was a stroke. I didn't, because I don't remember anything. I woke in ICU, but see, God tests you all the time.
And
I
even
think that
The other side, Mr. Gilchrist, is that I hope you realize that you are going to live long past the 100
yeah,
because of what you're doing now.
yeah,
You're capturing history.
yeah.
It's like looking at Gil Noble. Gil Noble is gone, but he is here now more than ever. And so that I was listening and I was visualizing the experiences that you have had, whether it is at the rally at Nan on every Saturday or at Convent Baptist Church, to go back and be able to select 100 of the magic moments
Whoa.
that you've experienced. That's got to be incredible. And so God has blessed you
It's a calling.
in an incredible form and fashion.
It's a calling.
Definitely.
It's a calling.
Yeah.
Well, I share that with JT. And we have that moment as being a videographer. It's such a blessing.
Yeah. When I went down to, with Rev to the Aubrey case, I think that was like the first time it really like hit me.
Yeah.
And the simple fact that Rev called, I don't remember the time span, but I know he called the rally on a Saturday, and it was like a week maybe, and to see over 400 to 500 pastors there was like incredible. Now, it was all different nationalities, all different religions, but we all came together for one common goal. And thank God that it turned out to be a success. That we got the verdict. So
Capture that, man.
Yeah. That wasn't my first time. That was my first time on the road with Rev. I mean, I went to D.C., which is local somewhat, but when we went down to Florida, which it was in the backwoods, it was like one of those real small towns. So it was kind of crazy to see all these people in this one little town in front of this one little courthouse. So that was amazing.
I always call Rev a disciple of Martin Luther King.
Definitely.
He is.
Definitely.
That he is.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, he
Which
was.
is what he calls himself. You know, I became. I didn't like Al Sharpton. Okay?
Like Gil Noble? Like Gil Noble.
I didn't like Al Sharpton.
I'm
And then the question of what I did not like became how things were presented to me through a third and fourth party medium. And then I did not like the medallions. I did not like the jumpsuits. I did not like all of those things that allows you to focus on what you don't like as opposed to the message. Okay? And when you start focusing on the message, it becomes very, very different. And so the issue is, as you know, Mr. Gilchrist, Malcolm was my godfather, but my mentor was Percy Sutton.
Ooh, ooh. Wow.
And I spent at least 50 years of my 70 years with Percy Sutton. I not only dealt with civil rights and human rights, I traveled around the world with Mr. Sutton, whether it was in Senegal or was in Cuba, or whether it was in Brazil, or whether it was in Texas, etc. And Mr. Sutton, one day I was asking him, as a young man, questions, why are we where we are today? Essentially was the question. And he said something that I want to convey to you and your associates. He said, Lloyd, the foundation is the word common. Common is the foundation. So if we identify what we have in common, okay? So right now, all of us, I think there are 4 or 5 of us right now connecting on this, we have something in common. We are here right now together. He said, so if you figure out what you have in common, then you will become communal, okay? And when that means that we now are starting to talk to each other. We've shared from the baton to the rally. So we're starting now to become communal. And he said, once you become communal, then you will communicate. And that means listening to each other, sharing thoughts with each other, and learning from each other. He said, and once you communicate, you will then have a community. And so he used the foundation of all those words, whether it's common, communal, communicate, community is the word common. And so too often, we don't focus on what do we have in common. If we meet each other and we are on the corner of Malcolm X Boulevard and 116th Street, at that exact moment, we have something in common. We're on that corner together.
Right.
And so the question is, how do we deal with that which we have in common? Because God, not you, not me, God had these two forces to meet at this point together. Right. None of us were in control of both of us meeting on that corner. And so now the question becomes, now that we're here, where do we take it and how do we move from here? So Percy Sutton said common, communal, communicate equals community.
How do you see our future here in Harlem with all the onslaught of the Republican lies and all the mixing and matching? This COVID-19 has split us apart. We're fighting at each other what vaccination we should be taking. Amongst a lot of us, we fear this vaccine because of past, who's controlling it, I see that that's why we got Trump, because we were fighting over Hillary. Now, what do we do from here to get everybody to vote? Because if black people aren't responsible and if we're not a communal to know our best path to take, if any sort of Trumpism gets in 23, I think America will be in trouble. And we always come in last place in anything that happens to America, whether we want to leave it or not. What do you think should...
America's in trouble now. What happens again to us, I certainly hope beyond hope that Donald Trump does not reemerge and be reelected. But I'm not going to cry about that, because there are people who look like us, who have preceded us over the centuries and decades, who've gone through far more than that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and what we are is survivors. So what happens is the enemy, however we define the enemy, has never been able to understand how do these people survive after all we have done to them, to take away their education, to take away their housing, to arrest them, to kill them, to deal with malnutrition. How do they survive? But we are survivors. Unfortunately, the toll that it takes is a great, great toll. And so I'm not going to get caught up in Donald Trump, okay? Because what we're going to find is that the people who support Donald Trump are going to be the greatest victims of Donald Trump.
That's true.
Okay? We already know that this man has no respect for or concern for us as a people. So we're actually ahead of the game. I mean, how can someone in West Virginia, where we have Joe Manchin as the senator from West Virginia, holding up the infrastructure bill, holding up the family bills. There's no state with a poorer community than in West Virginia.
But he's making money. He's making money.
Excuse me. And he was elected for that purpose, and he is serving what his master is. And God has a plan for Joe Manchin. But at the end of the day, what we are going to do, and I'm so sorry sometimes of the toll that is taking on us as we have to experience this, but we're going to survive. And the way we're going to survive is by communicating with each other, by passing on history, by looking at the future, being at the rally, being at Convent Avenue Baptist Church, but talking to each other. And so that's why they have us with 5 and 6 locks on our door. They have us with these locks so we don't get to know our neighbors. And if we don't know our neighbors, we won't communicate with each other. And we're going to be intimidated by the unknown. So we don't know the neighbor who lives on the floor above us, the floor below us, oftentimes to the right and left of us, around all of these locks on our door. And so what we have to do is walk down the street and see each other and say hello. And when we do that, that person may not answer you back. He may not, or she may not. Why would they not answer you back? because they're not used to people saying hello. They're not used to people saying, how are you? So a premise, there is a group of young boys, they're in their teens, and they are standing on the corner, and you walk by as an adult, and they're standing there, they're in their discussions, and you say, hello. Well, there's a distinct possibility, if not probability, that no one will respond to you. The next time you walk past that same group of people, you say hello again, and one of them will nod at you. And the next time you walk past that group again, you say hello again, and 2 or 3 of them will say, how you doing? And the next time you walk past them, before you get to them, one of them will say, hey, how you doing? We've got to break down the barriers of non-communication with each other.
This is true. As head of the Chamber of Commerce, now your job as head of the Chamber of Commerce is to promote businesses, black businesses. Now, how difficult is that to get in Harlem?
Let me say, I do not define that as my role. First of all, it is not the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce is not a black chamber of commerce.
Okay.
So anyone can join the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce.
That's right.
We are this year celebrating the 125th anniversary of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce. So, but let me give you the what I believe and what we believe the chamber is about. You have all heard the old adage that the business of business is business. And that has been the historic statement. The business of business is business. Our motto is that the business of business is people.
Right.
That's our motto.
Right.
And so when we are addressing what the Chamber's mission is to make sure that there's quality education taking place in our public school system, that there is quality health services taking place at Harlem Hospital, that the libraries are open, that the parks are safe, that the transportation system is working. So we don't just look at it from the vantage point of a business, which is oftentimes brick and mortar. Our sense is that if you are going to be concerned about your community and you want to be a successful business person or entrepreneur, be concerned about the children. Be concerned about the senior citizens. Provide some jobs for people who need jobs. Open up your doors, and when a customer comes into your store, be courteous and say hello and treat them with respect. Those are some of the things that we focus on, other than simply dealing with the cash register.
You know, before we leave, I'd like to continue with Gil Noble. I think that's item 4. If that reads off in the control room, is that the other Gil Noble? Is it 4? I want to finish it. All right. Just run that. I want to finish with Gil on his opinion of Malcolm, to give our youth and all of us remind of us what, how it's changed since then. I mean, what changed me anyway.
Before we roll in,
The media's coverage of Malcolm versus the real deal.
It was awful. And so I learned about Malcolm, and I realized that I had been had. I realized that
You
I
had
had
bought
missed.
what the media had told you.
Yes, I bought it, hook, line, and sinker. But when I heard Malcolm's entire presentation, everything fell in line, and it was logical. And it made me understand that there's no sin in being angry. In fact, if you're not angry, there's something wrong with you.
And why do you think Malcolm was killed?
I think there's
real issues.
I think that there are a number of reasons why he was killed. And it's a very, very painful reality that we need to deal with. He was a threat to America's global ambitions. He had done a lot in Africa to awaken the African countries and let them understand that they should not be a victim of the courtship that American businesses were engaged in, the Peace Corps and all these things, because they don't love you. They want your minerals. If they did, look what they're doing to us, and we're your brothers and sisters. Look what they're doing to us in, you know, Mississippi and whatnot. And so many of them began to quote Malcolm on the floor of the United Nations, ironically. So I think that that's one dimension that the State Department, and they tried to kill him when he was in Egypt. They poisoned him, but he had his stomach pumped and he survived. So that was one dimension. Then there were the authorities here in this country that also wanted him to leave this life. And then there was a lot of factionalism within the Nation of Islam. And there was a lot of greed, there was a lot of ambitiousness, and there was a lot of friction, because the Nation of Islam had grown into an economic colossus.
And self-sufficiency.
They were self-sufficient.
The same things that your parents practiced.
Exactly. And they were a threat. They had their own schools. They had their own religion.
Food.
They had their own name, their own diet. They were self-sufficient. And that was a threat.
Big time.
And so I think that there are some people who were in the nation who, see, many of the people who had been fished by Malcolm into joining the nation had been on the street like he had. And a lot of them, as the money started to come in, some of the old temptations began to take over. I interviewed a man, Talmadge Hayer, in prison, and he told me that he thought that Malcolm was a hypocrite and that he was wrong in bad-mouthing Elijah. He told me this on camera. Mm-hmm. And he told me how they went about assassinating him and, you know, how determined they were to take him out.
He really believed it, you think?
Oh, he believed it.
Mr. Gilchrist, I'm going to have to jump off in about 4 minutes.
And so he took me right through. He was one
Okay, fine. Just wanted you to know I have a 6 o'clock. I have to be on time.
3 gunmen. One had a rifle and 2 had pistols. He was one of the gunmen. The rifle went off first and struck down Malcolm, and the 2 men with revolvers went up to the stage and emptied their revolvers. Mm-hmm. And he told me that he was convinced that he had done the right thing, you know. And I asked him, I said, in your life, have you ever so much as spat at a member of the White Citizens Council or the Ku Klux Klan? Or did you ever smack one? And he dropped his head and he said, no.
Did he understand the meaning of that question, do you think?
I made it clear. Mm-hmm. But he said that it wasn't until years later, while in prison, that he came to understand that Malcolm was not lying, he was not wrong, and that there was corruption. And he had a nervous breakdown in prison because he realized that who he had taken off.
Yes, exactly.
You know, so I mean, this was just a very, very painful experience, and it's something that we are not yet wrestling with. I don't want to get overly philosophical, but I just wanted to respond to your question that Malcolm had a tremendous impact on me after he was dead.
Afterwards.
Yes.
I became...
Lloyd just called and said he has to go by 6, and we should be off in a few minutes. Your comments, Lloyd, before you go? You still there?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My comments are simple. I thank you and honor you for taking time at this historic moment to recognize and pay tribute to my godfather, Malcolm X. God has blessed me to have his leadership, his vision, the mentorship of Percy Sutton, and now the partnership with Reverend Al Sharpton. But you know, it's funny when you get past all of that, the most senior and important person in my life connecting all of that was my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think with so many of the Black women and Black men particularly, the respect and regard for our elders, for our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, is what brings us to this point. Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Gilchrist, I look at you, Winston, and whenever I see you, I tell you I appreciate you and try to share with you the respect and the admiration that I have for you and your mission. And please note that any and every time I can ever be of support or value to you on anything that you're doing, you simply need to let me know and I will be honored to do so.
Yeah, God is good. That's
all the time.
That's right.
That's why we survive.
Yes, sir.
See, with that God consciousness, it relates to that theme I have here. The God in me loves the God in you. And when you see it shine in other people, it just opens up your heart. You realize that you're here for a purpose. And that goes with the name.
Part of that, though, Mr. Gilchrist, is if you don't see it in yourself,
yeah, well,
that you're not going to see it in others. And I look at your smile when I see you. I look at the peace that comes out of you, and I understand that God is there with you. And thank you for sharing your God with me, and I'm sure my God with you.
Hey, it's the name means something. It means worker for Christ. And here I am at Sharpton's, my calling, and my grandson adopted.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
So it's all praises to the power of why we're here. We're spiritual people, and we wouldn't live through that, all that nonsense for the last 400 years if we didn't have any God consciousness. And it's the ladies that brought us here that survived all that, the Black women of the planet.
But particularly the Black women. I'm sorry I have to jump off. They're waiting for me. Thank you for allowing me to share with you, and it was also an educational experience for me. Thank you.
You brought the education. Right. Thank you.
Very good.
Power to the people.
Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. And with that, we're going off. That's a cue. Power to the people. The God in me loves the God in you. Stay tuned for more. And we're at 59. That was good.
Nice.
You know, I was thinking about when he spoke about Reverend Sharpton and the medallion, you know, back in the day.
We all had that vision.
And at some point, he asked us for protection. And we said, no problem. And I remember we were down in Bensonhurst, and we're walking. People don't know that Reverend Bill Jones, who was Reverend Sharpton's mentor, he carried a 38. And he was one of Martin's lieutenants.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, Witherspoon, I always had my 38 right here.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Martin was nonviolent, but I wasn't going out like that.
Yeah.
But
that's at Brooklyn.
the thing was, we wanted the people down at Bensonhurst to know that we will do what we have to do to protect him.
That's it.
And if we have to take your life, we'll take it with no problem. And same thing with Martin Luther King. When you see the March on Washington, you get the full picture of him on the stairs by the Capitol and all these people around him. You'll see all these men with white caps on. Every one of those men was a member of the National Black Police Organization. So he had a few hundred armed men around him. He wasn't trusting the Capitol Police or anything like that. Those men were there.
The mayor was part of his
Adams.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, is that
They
still
started their
around? Is that one
organization.
still around?
100 Blacks is still around. I'm not a member. I left a number of years ago.
Okay.
But the thing is that we have to protect our leadership at all costs. And you don't have to agree necessarily. But no voice should be silenced because someone doesn't like hearing the voice. You know, and
Definitely.
I'll leave it at that.
Definitely.
That was interesting.
Very much so. Very much so. I enjoyed it though.
Yeah. I've been seeing Lloyd for years, man. Him and somebody else. I mean, these guys are born and raised in Harlem. Yeah. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, darling.
He did a good job.
Yeah.
It was,
Really good.
you know, and bringing in Percy Sutton and his travels and just being able to sit in on those meetings as a
Can you
child.
imagine that?